it moves around quite a lot. It begins with Utterson in his house, looking at Jekyll's will. He then goes to Dr. Lanyon's house to ask him about whether he knows about Hyde. He then goes and stalks the door, waiting for Mr. Hyde for days and days and days. Hyde turns up, they have this interaction, which is quite, I suppose it's quite kind of threatening and aggressive, where Utterson says, "Let me see your face," and Hyde says, "Good, here's my address." They're kind of sparring with each other a little bit. And of course, up here, on page 14, we have Utterson's reaction to Hyde. So the way that Hyde makes him feel uncomfortable, right? That he looks weird, but he can't quite work out what it is about Mr. Hyde that makes him feel so strange. He then goes to Jekyll's house. So in a way, he's kind of ended up where he should have gone straight away to find out what's going on. Okay. So he goes to Jekyll's house. He stops and knocks. A well-dressed elderly servant opened the door. Now please be aware, there's some under the surface stuff here. So Jekyll, it shows that Jekyll is rich. Jekyll has servants, right? He's a really, really rich man. He's a doctor, and he's got lots of titles, but he's also what I would describe as old money. Now remember, old money means that you've inherited your money over generations. Okay, so he's old money. He's an elite. He's a noble. "Is Dr. Jekyll at home, Paul?" asked the lawyer. "I will see Mr. Utterson," said Paul. Now Paul, circle him, he comes up a few times in the story. He is Jekyll's butler. Do you know, you seen a butler before? Yeah? Think of like Saltburn style, right? Oh, Mr. Utterson, right? I like to imagine Paul's kind of a bit more of a lad, right? You know, I see Mr. Utterson. But maybe he's more of a distinguished lawyery type, butler type. I don't know. You can decide, right? Would you prefer? I'll do a vote. Who would like Paul to be a kind of like classic old school butler? Polite. Who would like him to be a bit more of a working class geezer? Right. Hands up for the polite butler. Hands up for the geezer. All right, fair enough. "Is Dr. Jekyll at home, Paul?" asked the lawyer. "I see Mr. Utterson," said Paul, admitting the visitor as he spoke. Good quotes here, please, for setting. "Into a large, low-roofed, comfortable hall. Big entrance hall, paved with flags." Now that means stones. Flagstones are big, old, expensive stones you get in stately homes. "Warmed after the fashion of the country house by a bright open fire, furnished with costly cabinets of oak." Okay, so again, what does that mean? He's rich. Fires burning, beautiful stones, beautiful wood cabinets. "Will you wait here by the fire, sir, or shall I give you a light in the dining room?" "Here, thank you," said the lawyer, and he drew near and leaned on the tall fender. This hall, in which he now left alone, was a pet fancy of his friend the doctor's, and Utterson himself was wont to speak of it as the pleasantest room in London, right? So Dr. Jekyll, he likes to entertain, right? He likes to have guests, and he likes to appear wealthy, right? He's not a man who hides his wealth. Everyone comes round, everyone looks at this hall, and they'll say it's the nicest hall in London. It's the place to be, right? But tonight, and but's always a change in direction. But tonight, there was a shudder in his blood. Oh. The face of Hyde sat heavy on his memory. He's troubled. He's troubled by this imagination of Hyde. He felt what was rare with him, a nausea and a distaste of life. So nausea is like you're going to be sick. And in the gloom of his spirits, he seemed to read a menace in the flickering of the firelight, the polished cabinets, and the uneasy starting of the shadow on the roof. He was ashamed of his relief when Paul presently returned to announce Dr. Jekyll was gone out. So, why is he relieved? He's gone to see Jekyll to ask him about Hyde, and Paul says he's not here. Why is that relieving? Wouldn't that be annoying? You've gone to see him and he's not there? Why is he relieved? Why is he like, whew? He's avoided the awkward conversation, hasn't he? It's like a delay. It's like delayed awkwardness, right? He doesn't really want to talk to Jekyll about Hyde because it's awkward. Well, we're going to come on to this. He's going to ask the butler about Hyde. I saw Mr. Hyde go in. Oh, that's Utterson. Sorry. I saw Mr. Hyde go in by the old dissecting room door. Paul, he said, is that right? When Dr. Jekyll is from home. So this is what we've learned, right? The door, the chapter 1 door. So chapter 1 door is the back door of Jekyll's house, right? That's why Utterson knows it's Jekyll, because he knows that door. Okay. The door is the old dissecting room. Okay, so it's like a lab where they used in Victorian days they used to do this thing where they'd like dissect bodies. So you'd have these theatres where there'd be like a body on a table, then loads of like seats around it. So students would come and watch like doctors like dissect and be like, this is the heart, everybody, what do you think? Because they didn't have very good science, right? So it's an old kind of like weird like dissecting bodies theatre. But again, it's creepy, right? Like he dissects bodies, people go and watch. The Victorians were obsessed with like death and bodies and weird stuff. Quite right, Mr. Utterson, sir, replied the servant. Mr. Hyde has a key. So the servants know, right? The servants know, which means that Mr. Hyde comes around a lot. He has a key, right? So he can come and go whenever he please. Your master seems to repose a great deal of trust in that young man, Paul, resumed the other musingly. Yes, sir, he do indeed, said Paul. We all have orders to obey him. Okay. I do not think I ever met Mr. Hyde, asked Utterson. Oh dear no, sir. Oh, he never dines here, replied the butler. Indeed, we see very little of him on this side of the house. Okay. He mostly comes and goes by the laboratory. Remember, the laboratory is a symbol of sort of the weird science that people are kind of thinking about. So we've got the Darwin stuff, we've got the psychology, we've got all this weird stuff that's going on. Okay, so it's like he never comes in the front door; he only comes in the back door. You can also read that as a slightly sexual reference as well. I know I probably should bring this up, but Mr. Hyde comes and goes in the back door whenever he pleases. It is a sexual reference to gay sex and sodomy, which was a crime, right? I can either tell you the truth or not, but that is the truth, right? So he comes and goes when he pleases, always in the back door, never in the front door, never with respectability, always in secret. Okay, so the dining bit, circle please. This is about respectable, right? So he's never public. He's never with the public. He's always in the private, in the back. Okay. Again, it just makes it more. It makes it more mysterious. It's mysterious. Well, good night, Paul. Good night, Mr. Utterson. And the lawyer set out homeward with a very heavy heart. Ah, he's sad. Poor Harry Jekyll, he thought. My mind misgives me that he is in deep waters. He was wild when he was young. Ah, interesting, right? So he's got He's got a past, right? He was wild when he was young. A long while ago, to be sure. But the law of God, there is no statute of limitations. So in the eyes of God, God never forgets, right? The statute of limitations, if you underline that, it means, how should I say this? Like, it means like when too much time has passed. It's a weird thing. So, for example, let's say that you, I don't know, let's say that you wanted to accuse somebody of a crime they did to you 20 years ago. Right, so to you, 20 years ago, that guy stole my wallet. The court would say, sorry, the statute of limitations on theft is 10 years. In other words, you can't accuse anybody of a crime that is beyond that time limit, even if they did it. Right? Certain crimes don't have a statute of limitations. But in God's eye, there is no forgiveness. Right? If you did a bad thing when you were a kid, God never forgets. So this idea of law of God is the idea of like sin, that God never forgets your sins. So this is a long time ago when he did his wild stuff, whatever the wild stuff is, God never forgets. It must be that. The ghosts of some, this is a good line, the ghosts of some old sin, the cancer of some concealed disgrace, punishment coming. Pedi claudo. For my Latin students. What does it mean? You haven't learned that? What a waste of time. Right. You've done the good stuff. Pedi claudo is the Latin for essentially punishment. Punishment comes limping. So what it means is that it doesn't matter what you do, at some point your past catches up with you. It limps after you like a Hyde figure. But you always pay for your crimes. Years after memory has forgotten, and the self-love condone the fault. So he says that Jekyll is now paying for his sins. Something he did when he was younger. Hyde has found out about it and is now punishing him, right? He's blackmailing him over these sins. So all of this here, do a little arrow for me, is blackmail, right? So if you don't give me all your money, I will ruin your reputation. I will tell everybody about your wild behaviours. And the lawyer, scared by the thought, brooded a while on his own past, groping in all the corners of memory, lest by chance some jack-in-the-box of an old iniquity should leap to light there. You know jack-in-the-boxes? You wind them and you wind them and you wind them, and it springs out. So Utterson goes, oh my God, have I done anything in the past? What was my childhood like? Have I done sins? Has he? No. His past was fairly blameless. Yet he was humbled into the dust by the many ill things he had done. Oh, so he's done little bits as well, right? And raised up again into a sober and fearful gratitude by the many that had come so near to doing, yet avoided. So Mr. Utterson has done a few bad things, but there's many things that he nearly did but stopped. And he said, oh, thank God I stopped, right? So this is the idea again of Utterson, which is like he nearly does pleasure or pleasurable things, but doesn't, right? So he feels kind of safe. No one can blackmail him for things done in the past. Can you see that okay? And then by a return of his former subject, he conceived a spark of hope. Of hope. This Master Hyde, if he were studied, thought he, must have secrets of his own. Black secrets. By the look of him. Secrets compared to which poor Jekyll's worst would be like sunshine. Things cannot continue as they are. It turns me cold to think of this creature, this is a good line, this creature stealing like a thief into Harry's bedside. Poor Harry. Poor Harry. What awakening. And the danger of it, for if this Hyde suspects the existence of the will, he may grow impatient to inherit. So he says if Hyde knows about the will, he may kill Jekyll, right? A dead Jekyll is a rich Hyde. I must put my shoulder to the wheel, if Jekyll will but let me, he added. If Jekyll will only let me. For once more he saw before his mind's eye, as clear as transparency, the strange clauses of the will. Remember, the strange clauses is death / disappearance. Okay? Now this bit here, what's he saying? He's saying, this Hyde must have his own secrets. If I can study him, if I can find out what his secrets are, I can blackmail the blackmailer. Right? If you blackmail my friends, I'll tell everybody about you. Right? So it's this kind of vicious circle. So he wants to, I'll add this down, he wants to blackmail the blackmailer. Right? If I find out his secrets, if I study him, if I research him, if I inspect him, I can find out what he's done, and then I can free my friends. But notice Utterson is quite happy to do crimes himself as well, which is kind of interesting. Okay, very good. So that is the end of